Hello and welcome to episode 291 of The Crate and Crowbar.
Oh.
It is the 9th of August 2019. My name is Chris Thurston and joining me tonight is Tom Francis.
Hello.
And Philippa War.
Hello.
The internet's foremost Animal Crossing Grudges and Teamfight Tactics correspondent.
Mm-hmm.
How are the animals? And what have they done wrong?
No, we don't have time for this. It's mostly just Octavian still, and I don't know if he's done anything else wrong, to be honest, because I'm not speaking to him, and I haven't since, I think, February. So
thank you for that update, and that concludes the news section.
Oh.
It's good to have you back on the podcast, Pip.
Thanks. Have I been away a while?
I think so. It's been
I
several...
I talked about Teamfight Tactics quite a lot.
Yeah, we did. That was like last month, I think.
Oh.
Do you want to talk about Teamfight Tactics quite a lot?
I mean, I could. I've got a real problem with it, though.
You've a problem how?
I keep playing it. For me, that seems to be a bit of a problem because it's getting in the way of my actual to-do list. And then I broke free of its grasp for long enough to actually bring out my to-do list. And then I immediately accidentally started looking at motorway service station reviews. So I feel today has been a write-off, to be honest with you.
Was Teamfight Tactics, I know you were trying to play all three of the auto battlers.
Yeah.
Was that the last one in your run? Or?
No, that was the second one I polished off. I polished the first two off really quickly, like within the first day or so of playing both of them.
And polishing off means getting to number one at some point.
Yeah, like finished. I finished.
You completed
them.
Finished it, okay.
Finished them.
There's no further content.
I came first in one match of them and that I finished. And it's still just auto chess that I haven't managed. But in my defense, I haven't actually played it since I decided that was my challenge. Or like, I haven't played it since the last time you mocked me about this being my challenge. Yes, there was a parting shot as you came up the stairs to do the podcast that I will not forget.
Wow. It's terrifying. I've forgotten it.
Oh, it won't get forgotten, Tom.
But yeah, so that's...
I suppose... have you played it at all, Auto Chess?
No, but mostly just because it's really
You have
slow.
played it?
I've... Since...
Oh, since then.
Oh, sorry, I meant
then.
ever.
Oh, yeah, no, I have. Right. But the problem with it is that it's really janky and really, just slow. Like, it takes forever to load into a game. It takes forever to, like, get anywhere. Like, you are so at the mercy of loot drops, more so than any of the other ones. Like, the actual loot combinations are complicated and...
Do you think it's going to die off now that the two large companies are in town?
I don't know. I hope
I didn't want to
not.
say big boys.
We've said it now.
Yep.
I hope not. I don't know how it is to play it on mobile, actually, because I know that they released the mobile version, but I couldn't get that to download. So I don't know. But like all of the people that were involved in the original Dota, or not all of them, but like a lot of them went on to get jobs at the bigger studios. So maybe that would happen, but that's a concern. Of,
I wouldn't.
You know, did you invent this genre and then other people came in and went, woohoo!
I would love to know what that conversation was like between them and Valve, because Valve had them out, to their studio, and I've got to assume part of that conversation was, do you want to just join us and work for us? And they evidently did not. And they came to this sort of mutual understanding where Valve would get to make their own, and the auto chess people could sell auto chess. But I wonder, like, from their perspective, what is that choice like? Because it's not like if they say no, I mean, they gave Valve their blessing to kind of make basically a rip-off of it. But if they hadn't, would Valve really have not made a game in this genre? Like,
yeah.
I've got to assume they would have anyway. So it's really a choice of like,
or like Valve would have just said, no, you can't monetize this or whatever, right? Like, so what would I don't know. Because
the mobile one is just
pass for it as well, don't they?
Right.
At this point, but sorry, the mobile one.
The mobile one is kind of like its own thing, right? It doesn't. Valve don't own any of that, I assume.
I don't think so. So they've because they were able to make their own thing, which is the thing that I tried to download on mobile, but my phone wasn't having any of it. And then there's Teamfight Tactics and Underlords, and Underlords has a phone version and. So, yeah, it's one of those things where, like, I don't know how I feel about the ethics of it. I think I will try and, occasionally bung them some money just because I don't want them to, not get anything from this, or I don't know, because maybe I'm being really wrong-headed. Maybe they've done absolutely amazingly from this and, no regrets or whatever. I don't think I've seen any interviews about it, but yeah.
You've been playing loads of Teamfight predominantly though.
Yeah.
Right? And it's been updated quite a lot. So I'd be interested to know, because I haven't actually played it in a little while. I'd be interested to know if you've had a sense of it changing much or evolving.
Interesting, because things like new champions getting added is obviously also, that's a big thing, and item changes, like they changed a bit how items worked. The thing that's really annoying me at the moment is that you can't mouse over a noble and get the noble description. I'm like, I can't remember it.
Noble specifically?
Yeah, as in in the update, the most recent update, for some reason the mouse over tooltip that it gives you that explains what the thing does, it just says noble. And it's kind of maybe that's just a comment on the aristocracy or something. It's what do they do? But yeah, that's kind of annoying me. But that's,
if you don't know, it's not your place to ask.
If you have to ask the price, you can't afford it. It would be an interesting approach to the economy. But to more answer your question, it's been weird because I think my way of playing it has changed because they introduced ranked mode.
Right.
So I am very much more about the efficiency. I'm paying a lot more attention to so to briefly describe it for people who don't know it, should I do that? Or?
I think briefly, because obviously we talked about it a bunch already, but yeah.
Okay. So essentially you pit groups of champions against each other on what looks like a chessboard, but in this case it's hexagonal spaces rather than squares, and they automatically do battle, but it's
they automatically chess.
They automatically chess, but the ways that they interact with each other are the things that you have control over or can try and control. So you pick up champions from a shared pool and you try and combine them. So 3 level 1 champions make a level 2 champion, 3 level 2s make a level 3, and they are a lot more powerful. Anyway, so there are these sections every so often where you can actually see them running around in a big circle in the middle, and you have to run over to them to pick them up.
This is sort of the shop, right?
Yeah.
There's a shop as well. This is the bonus round.
Yeah, this is so you've got the stuff that you can buy the champions on the little board at the bottom, with essentially your draft each time it gets, shown on the screen at the bottom, and you can pick any of those out if you want and if you've got space. But these rounds are you are physically fighting, or not fighting, but physically trying to get ahead of other people or to get to a specific champion who's running around the board before other people. So there's an actual physical skill element, and it you have to factor in your position on the leaderboard because the people who are the furthest down get to go first. So that's their way of that's their catch-up mechanic basically. But increasingly I've been really interested in the items that are on the board rather than the champions, because I'm mostly, unless something would complete a hero set, and I'm really far down the list so I could actually get it. I do a cursory scan for, if this person is still free by the time I get released from my little, space prison to actually go and pick someone up. Then I will just actually scan the items that each of them have, because this is where a big difference comes in from the main sort of draft that you can pick from or redeal and pick from new things. Is that each of the champions that's running around in the middle has an item that they come with. And so It might be the component for a bigger item, or it might be the bigger item itself. And so that's a really interesting thing when you're kind of like, oh, I have no use for this champion whatsoever. It's not got any synergy with the things I'm trying to do. But a static shiv would be amazing right about now. So, you might just make a beeline for them and then immediately sell them, but the item you'd bung onto someone else, or you'd be like, ooh, that person is useless or like really low down. You start having to make all of these other calculations. Like, I could get a champion that is worth 5 coins, and so I could sell them and use that money, and that would actually give me quite a significant boost financially if I want to like sift through the deck a bit more. Or I could pick up the really, really cheap hero that I kind of have no financial gain from, because it only, you can only sell it for like 1 gold. But it's carrying a chainmail, and if I marry the chainmail with the sword thingy, then I get the guardian angel item that I can put on a knight, and that, resurrects them with 800 health, I think. 800, 1,000? Whatever.
So are those things items in themselves and their components for this other item?
Yeah.
Right.
So there's just all of these different synergies that you start to pay attention to. And I think that's why I can't answer your question accurately at the moment, because I have been getting to grips with the game roughly at the pace that it was coming out. And then I really doubled down on it this time, especially because ranked is now an option. And so I'm sort of working my way up through silver and just being like, hello, I will take that hush. Yes, goodbye, out of my way.
So you're so close to it that it's harder to see what those changes are doing to the balance. Because they added a whole like new allegiance, right? And like hex tech.
So they've it's weird because my memory. Mm-hmm. So my sense of all of that is a bit jumbled because I played a lot of it, and I was kind of a bit, I don't know how much of that was stuff that existed before and I just wasn't paying attention to it, and how much stuff was like that has actually changed. So yeah, I feel like I'm not a good correspondent.
Well, but it's true for how you experience these things, right? You naturally tunnel vision on particular parts of it, and then because that's the only way to process how many different moving parts there are.
Well, I mean, because like I moved away from League for a while as well, so, and Dota as well, more so Dota actually, so I'm a bit lost especially with newer items. I'm like, I don't know what that item is, I don't know what it does in Dota, and actually some of the new heroes, I'm like, who's that? Like, what's happening? So it was that thing of trying to get my brain back into gear and like keep up with patches and figure out, like all of that other stuff, so, like, there are moments that I do remember things changing, like, they've added Twisted Fate, all of that stuff. But yeah, the other stuff, it's more of a kind of sense of like, knights are good at the moment. Gunslingers are a lot better than they used to be, or at least I'm a lot better at using them than they used to be. And that's the point at which I'm like, wait, so does that mean they are, or does it mean that I am, or does it mean that like people play differently in ranked, or does it mean, all of that stuff?
I'm interested to know if playing ranked and doing more of that stuff has encouraged you to, like, look at external sites or guides or tier lists or anything at all.
Well, I had a really annoying moment where, like, Dry Bear, Rory from, previously of, High Res, he's done a bunch of guides to Teamfight Tactics. And I was like, I booted one of them up because I was curious about what he's doing now after High Res and stuff. And so I was watching it and I started the video like, what could he know that I don't? And then I watched that video and then I immediately went into the biggest win I've had in like a very long time. And I was like, oh no.
It's this.
Damn it. So that was a bit of a humbling thing. But I would also, I would recommend his videos for people who maybe think that they're better than that was kind of good. And also, I don't know, there's like, I'm trying to figure out how I want to approach items and stuff, because I know that there will be ways that are optimal to do it, but it's this thing of trying to balance that with what's actually pleasurable in the moment. Like, I've been trying to wean myself off ionic sparks, which are these. So
we've all been there.
So an ionic spark, it looks.
I've had 2 today.
It looks kind of like a crossbow, doesn't it? With a static crossbow kind of thing. And the idea is that it blitzes out a fixed amount of damage every so often. You can tell I really pay attention to the minutiae of things.
Ionic Spark is the one that does 200 damage when any enemy casts a spell.
Right. Yes, that's a thing. I remember this. But like, it really shelves off, and your items, once they're combined, you're stuck with them for the rest of the game. And so I've been trying to, like, I was in this really bad habit of, or not bad habit, but I liked making them because it was really fun early game to get that advantage and to, to be able to deal a lot of damage in the moment, but they shelve off so dramatically. It's like, and I think that's one of the things that I'm not sure how I feel about, because you are playing the game better in accordance with, especially with ranked, you want to get higher up the ladder, otherwise why are you playing? But it's this thing of, but I then don't get the gratification of building an item I quite like. I have to play the meta, and I have to sort of not tit about with all yordles all the time, or like, that build, or the build that I did, which was all yordles except for Karthus. And Karthus is just there as like, almost like this grumpy school teacher who's taken a bunch of idiots out, like, and is absolutely regretting it as they tit about. So, like.
So you can have multiples of the same hero in this?
Yeah, you can.
So.
As long as they haven't combined, Yordles are a type of hero, not a...
Oh, I see, sorry.
Yeah, they're a race.
Like a gnome, basically.
It ups their miss chance if you have, like, with 3 of them, you get an okay chance to miss them with an attack, and then with 6 of them, it really goes up, and so you.
So they get worse the more of them you have?
No, as in people they're more
people
slippery.
missing them. I see.
Yeah. And so that was fun, because they just wouldn't get hit. And it was just, like, you'd sort of watch the end of one of these auto battles play out, and there was this person who had like loads of health, and one of my tiny yordles would have absolutely nothing, but all of their attacks would miss. And so it would just like, we'd spend about 10 seconds with like just this thing gradually like ticking down, and then they'd die. And I was like, I do feel good about that, but you don't. And I kind of know it, and I kind of know that was a bit of a shitty way to win.
That's the thing, like, I mean, I think Teamfight, they're all like this a bit, but Teamfight particularly has really strong differential between what scales and what doesn't in terms of both items and allegiances, and a lot of the strategy revolves around that. That's why when we were playing loads of it a couple of weeks ago, I was basically refusing to do anything other than all yordles. And that was partly because it was funny, but it's also partly because it was fun. But also because evasion scales really well. Like that, because people put loads of effort into their damage or on
now
hit
I'm missing
effect,
more damage.
and now it's you have 60% mischance, so 60% effort is wasted.
I like stuff that does, damage or whatever based on the percentage of the enemy's health and stuff, because obviously that scales and it's, but whereas your flat damage items, it's like, you just kind of can't really build them in good conscience. It's
kind of an interesting thing though, because like, that's the thing, is I think they kind of know that, like they know that these are going to scale off so abruptly that you shouldn't build them. So that makes them so to tune that, they're absolutely devastating. Like if you get one early, like for clarity, like so this item, the Ionic Spark, does 200 damage at the point where someone tries to cast a spell. But in the first tier of characters, most people only have about 400 health. So, and you build up your mana often by taking damage. So often people are at lost half their health, and then they cast a spell and they die. And so it can absolutely annihilate entire teams early on. And I think it has to be like that because that's the only reason you buy it is to start winning early. But it's an interesting trade-off because it feels quite abrupt, when its usefulness ends, basically.
I'm really bad at wasting all my money just sifting through the deck trying to find one more person to upgrade to the next tier. It's
So do you pay to get a new loadout in the shop kind of thing?
It gives you 5 new cards each time, each with a picture of a champion on, and you can spend the amount of money on the card to buy one of those champions. But you can spend 2 gold to refresh that 5 and refresh that 5 and refresh that 5. And so I do waste a lot of money, I would say. And I don't do it stupidly. If I will check through other people's builds and see, if someone else is going really hard on that champion, there probably won't be one. But if they haven't and I'm just at the mercy of numbers, I will try and just absolutely push through, which is, I tend to have no money all the time.
What are you been up to, Tom?
I played A Short Hike, which is delightful. It's just absolutely lovely. I've been following this for ages. It's by Adam Robinson Yu, who did, I think, everything except the music. I can't remember the name of the guy who did the music. And it's a third-person game from quite a zoomed-out perspective. It reminds me of isometric games, but it isn't technically isometric. It's fully 3D, but then it's rendered in a very low-res kind of filter. So it looks kind of retro. And you're a bird climbing a mountain. And
on foot?
Sometimes climbing and sometimes flying or gliding. And so it's very focused. It's probably about 2 hours long-ish. And you're ostensibly trying to get to the top of the mountain so that you get good cell reception because you're waiting for a phone call. And that's all that's said about that. And it's not mentioned again until you actually get to the peak. And then on your way up, you meet all these other characters who are sort of one's a fox and one's a crocodile and one's a dog, and some are other birds. And they're all off on their own quaint, fun, nice thing. And you'll have a quaint, fun, nice conversation with them about it. And during that, it kind of, your character sort of reveals that, that this is, this park, their aunt, I think, is the ranger there and lives on site. And also that you've been meaning to do this hike for ages anyway. So it's not purely for cell phone reception. It's, you are enjoying it as well. And it's just, the writing is so good and in a way that's, you almost wouldn't expect it was possible for writing to be, unusually good when the sentences are, the lines of dialogue are sort of 5 words long and there's 7 of those to a conversation and that's it. But it reminds me a lot of the conversations in Zelda where everyone's I've just got one thing about me and I'm going to say some cheerful stuff about it in a couple of lines and then you're done and then you move on.
I saw, is it, Jeremy, games journalist.
Peel?
Yes. Talking about it online in the same breath as, I think he was likening it to, A Night in the Woods and Donut County and things like that.
I like it more than both of those, actually. It's more wholesome than those, I think. Though both of those certainly Donut County has a real, edge to it. There's some nasty, stuff in it. This is so wholesome. And then there are some characters who are not completely wholesome, but even that, because the game is so charmed me at that point, and because I'm sort of, just picture this mood of really enjoying the experience and being conscious of enjoying the experience and wanting to meet everybody and talk to everybody and see what cool thing they have going on. That even when you meet a character who's kind of a dick, you're kind of intrigued about, why are you such a dick? This is really interesting. I want to find out more about this. So there's a character who just says, something to the effect of find me 15 shells, but in a better written way. But with doesn't offer you any incentive to do so, and you can kind of question them about why, and they won't give you any reason. And I met this character quite late, and I've been picking up shells the whole time. I actually thought I might have 15 shells, so I talked to them again right after the conversation ended, sort of to see if I could turn them in. And my character said, "So I have 11 shells so far," and they said, "Oh, cool. So I can ask you a quick question. Yeah, sure. Is 11 more or less than 15? It's less. Then why are you wasting my time? And you never really find out why that character is a dick. but that quest line is really satisfying anyway. Like, it wraps up in a way that's just, I won't spoil it, but it just, was, I don't know, funny and cute and really cool. And then someone else who's like scalping, feathers. Like, the upgrade system is also, so for a focused, short, narrative-driven game, it's surprisingly, two things are surprising. One is that the feel is really good for the movement. Like, walking around is just walking around, but then swimming feels really good in this game. And gliding is wonderful, which is obviously one of the main things. Like, you're climbing, a mountain climbing game where you play a bird, you are frequently just throwing yourself off the mountain and then just gliding around. And you can do that for free for as long as you like, and sort of gently descend. But then, initially, I think you can sort of flap once, or no, you can jump and then glide, and that's it. Then if you find a golden feather, then while gliding, you can flap again and get a bit of more altitude and then continue to glide. And then you just keep finding golden feathers. So those are the upgrade system. And you end up with sort of like 15 or 20. So you can sort of basically fly, you can flap 20 times. And someone is scalping these. You can buy them at the visitor center for like 50 coins. And then there's someone who's selling them at the top of the mountain for 100 coins. And so they seem like kind of a nasty character. And then, you can ask them like, what's your deal? And they say, well, my tuition fees went up this semester, so I really need to make 400 to be able to pay for the next semester of college. And you're like, oh, okay, I'll buy your overpriced feathers 4 times.
Aww.
Yeah, it's just beautiful. And actually ends up the, story, your sort of main story is very, very minimal, but it was really moving in the end. And it's also just like a lovely place to hang around. And, that upgrade system, it works really well, and it was like any upgrade that gives you a permanent buff is always like especially enticing in games. It's always really satisfying. I don't know well, that was like the agility orbs and Crackdown and that kind of stuff. That's a very powerful formula. And I found myself thinking at a certain point when I had sort of 12 or 13 of these, you need 7 to get to the peak. It sort of warns you before you get to the really hard part that, you need at least 7 feathers for this. And then once you get up there in the cold, usually, cause it's like a double jump kind of thing where you can use, if you have 3 feathers, you can do 3 jumps in the air and then you have to land and it recharges when you land. In the cold place, it doesn't recharge when you land because you've sort of frozen, you're losing, some of your energy and you have to find some nice warm thermal springs to warm yourself back up. And I had more than I needed, and I actually found myself, I saw someone else struggling on the mountain, and I really wanted to just, like, give them some of my feathers. And I remember thinking, like, wow, the game has really put me in a good mood because I would be willing to sacrifice some of my upgrade currency and just give it to another person just for fun. And at the time, I was thinking, it's a real missed opportunity. You can't do that. And you can't do it then, but then later on, I met someone who's also stuck on the mountain, and you can just give them some of your feathers. It's really nice.
It's waiting for me on my PC at the moment, actually. I got sidetracked though, cause,
Motorway service station reviews.
No, this was after that. Thank you. I ended up, playing, today's bit of the upcoming game Stones of Solace, which is, it's by, Delphine Fourneau. Is that how you say?
Well, I don't know if that's the right pronunciation, but
who also made Sacramento, which is one of my favorite games of all time. It's kind of a watercolor, visit to an area around a train station, which is absolutely beautiful. But this is every day you get a different idol, like a statue that is, I think they're animal themed, or it seems to be from what I've seen. And you open the game and each day it shows you a different one, I think. And you get to offer it a gift, which is, so I spent my time today just, bringing up that menu, and I, like, you get different types of flowers or leaves and things that you can put out on this, circular shaped receptacle, I assume make a plate or something. And so, but each time you click to pick one up, it's at a slightly different orientation. So I spent a lot of time like picking up and dropping stuff that wasn't the orientation I wanted, because I found that I really wanted to make a pleasing arrangement and you can do that as many times as you want. And as far as I could tell, today was a baby butterfly, which was a caterpillar, but the caterpillar was always charmed by my gift, and I was like, yes, I needed that today. Thank you. Good.
You should be charmed.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you don't get that at a motorway service station.
My reviews of motorway service stations are generally very poor. Can't recommend it.
But yeah, it's kind of I went looking on my Steam list for something in that general vein, and like, so I'll be interested to see how much appeal it has on a day-to-day basis, like whether it's something that I gravitate towards on certain days, or whether it's a thing that I feel compelled to come back to, because today was the first time that I'd opened it up to take a look. But I think it very much it just happened to be higher up on the list of recent installations than A Short Hike, and so I went with that instead. But it feels like it might occupy the same kind of generous, kind of uplifting, kind of beautiful.
Yeah. Delphine was working on that when at the game jam in Bali that I went to.
Oh, okay.
I think it was partly inspired by the prayer baskets that we saw that people would leave at shrines, where they sort of make a little basket out of, I think, like banana leaves, and then arrange flowers in them in a really beautiful way.
Yeah, like they were definitely flowers that I associate with, like, they were like hibiscus and like palm fronds and things like that. So I'll be interested to see. I think in some of the screenshots I saw, the flowers seem to change as well. So I don't know whether that would be like in accordance with the different statue that you have each day. But yeah, so I'm kind of interested to see how that unfolds or opens up over the year, or if it does.
Have you tried, like, intentionally making a really bad one and seeing how rude they get?
So I genuinely don't, like, it didn't occur to me until I'd shut the game down. And then I was like, I didn't want the caterpillar to be sad with me.
Yeah, you'd be doing it through, like, squinting eyes, like, oh no, I don't want to do this, but...
Like, I would probably ask a friend to tell me, like, if they got a bad review from the caterpillar or something, or like, maybe if it was an animal I didn't care for, or like its attitude or something, or if it seemed smug.
Which animals do you not care for?
Human.
God, that'd be really weird if they're just a dude named Steve.
Yeah, he can go. It's like, he'll get what? Half a leaf.
You have failed to charm Steve.
It was like, do you know what, Steve? I'm alright with that. That was on purpose. I don't know, maybe a dog. I'm a cat person. You know this.
I do know this.
I think I'm too...
Don't agree with it, but...
I'm too curious about any game that... where the computer has to judge your creative work. That's obviously just an inherently fascinating topic, and I always want to know, how do they do this? Like, and there's a whole spectrum from like, it doesn't judge it at all, or it judges it in some very superficial way, and unless you do something really weird and crazy, it's fine.
Maybe it's just like really grateful that you gave it anything, you know? Maybe the caterpillar's just like, oh, that's brilliant, thank you. No one's come over in a while. Like, it's a preview, like, build, so like no one will have fed it today or something.
There's a forthcoming game that I don't think it has a final title yet, but the working title is Draw Dog, which is by the developers of Wonder Song. Remember that game where you sort of like move the cursor in different directions to sing different tunes to solve problems?
Yeah, you're a bard, aren't you?
Yeah.
I've seen this, I think.
And Draw Dog is you're a dog in a kind of black and white world, but you get to paint the world, basically. You have this paintbrush, you can change colours, and people ask you to, like, can you give my house some colour, and you paint it.
Oh,
and,
that's so cute.
Yeah, that sprung to mind because I was speaking to the developer, and he was saying that, the problem he was currently struggling with is writing the algorithm that judges, did you paint their house nicely or
oh God,
poorly?
Yeah. Because, like, I remember because De Blob sort of tried something like that, or not tried an aesthetic judgment, but you had to cover a certain proportion of the world with colour and, maybe within a certain time limit or whatever. And I just, like, I loved the idea and hated the implementation. So And like, cause Unfinished Swan was just about like finding your way around, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't it? There wasn't a judgment system in that, I don't think. I didn't play it.
The Swan isn't ready. Don't review it yet. Early access Swan.
There's a game, I haven't played.
Swan as Service. Sorry.
Passepartout, the artist game.
Yeah.
I can't remember it's got some kind of subtitle, but I can't remember what it is. But Chris Livingston played that, and wrote about it for PC Gamer. And in his playthrough, there was one guy who would just always love his paintings of trees. And no matter what it, like how he drew it. And so he got increasingly sort of, what's the word? Avant-garde interpretations of a tree. So just like a completely brown canvas and it'd be like tree close up. And, but he always seemed to love it.
Oh.
I wonder if he was putting the word tree in the title of these paintings.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, lots of trees.
But you can, I mean, the fun thing is, in that game anyway, because you have, it's various people walking past and seeing if they like your art. And so you could basically do every solution to this problem. Like you can have one person who's just judging it by the title, one person who only likes a certain color and is just doing it by that, one person who likes a sort of nice balance of different, colors and shapes and stuff. And then you kind of can't complain as the player that it's irrational and hard to predict because that's art.
I think, so I'm interested in, like, seeing whether anyone's written anything about how the Happy Home Academy judging works in Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, because you can take these little classes where essentially you earn medals, and once you've earned enough medals, you level up and you get little leaf ticket presents and things like that. So it's just about a little hit of progress or a reason for you to own some of this nonsense, because you can then lay it down in a room and then, you know, what's it called? An otter will just sort of say, well done.
That's the ultimate dream.
I know, right? But the thing is, like in the current, in Pocket Camp, it's because in the previous ones, it was like, there was a lot of maths that underpinned it. Like if you had like items from particular sets, and if you had a full set, and if, you know, if you put particular things in different sort of feng shui arrangements in the room, and you'd get, you know, extra money or special items, blah, blah, blah. But in this, I'm not really sure, because it pretends it has a panel of 4 judges, and you can see 4, maybe 3. Each of them is represented on this little thermometer of a score, you know, and you see them gradually add to it, and you see which percentage of the bar each of them contributed. And I'm always curious, because some give a lot less than others, but I don't know why or who, like, or...
It's just edge.
But I don't know whether it's just that the game knows what your score should be of the final total. Like, basically you got a certain amount of items perfect, and then some of them will just be, oh, that's kind of in the same theme, and it will have some way of, like, you know, adding up the numbers of that, I'm sure. But I want to know how it divides that score between the different participants. Like, why did Isabel give me this percentage of that score? And it might just be that it's completely arbitrary, and it just goes, well, one of them will have given you a third of it, one of them will have given you less, one of, you know, that kind of thing. But I would be interested to know if any of the animals have anything that they're actually looking for, like that their little programming is scanning for. That would be interesting.
There is a game about, and I don't know if I'm going to say this word right, but Zen Koans? Koan?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Does anyone know how to pronounce that?
I don't.
I've always just said cone, but I might be wrong.
And the game is one of you is the master, and you, I think you build these little sort of, assemblies of shapes, colored shapes, with various numbers of faces and sides and stuff. And then you present them to your students, and you say, maybe it's just one, and you say, this one has the Buddha quality, and they have to make something and that shares that quality, and they present it to you, and all you can say to them is whether or not it has the Buddha quality. And the Buddha quality is something you're thinking of that is true for your shape, that may be true or not true for them.
Okay.
And your students are all trying to guess what the rule is, but I think not try and lead on to the other students that what the rule is. And that would be an interesting thing for, like, AI judging art. If you have multiple AI judges, they could present to you, here are my 3 favorite paintings. See if you can like abstract out what it is I'm responding to about these. Like, I like these 3 and I hate these 3.
There's a tabletop game called A Fake Artist Goes to New York, I think. And basically, have I told you about this before? I think so. If memory serves, all of you except one know the subject of the thing that you're drawing, and a piece of paper goes around the table and each of you adds one line, and the idea is for the others to work out who the fake artist is by who seems to be adding the wrong kind of line. So if you are the one that doesn't know what it is, you're trying to figure out either what the thing is so you can start drawing good lines, or draw non-committal lines that maybe look like you're trying not to let on to the fake artist what the object is. And so that's kind of interesting, because that's about like, at what point does the object or the idea become clear in the thing, in the lines that you've got on the page.
Do you have much experience of player judged creative competition in games?
No. I guess, I mean, only in like the meta sense of like making levels for something and having people judge those.
Because I just thought it might be, I was going to ask if there's a broader example, because the only example I can give is from the company I work for. So with that disclaimer, because I work for Hypixel Studios, which is a sister company of Hypixel, which is the biggest Minecraft minigame server, and one of the most popular modes on that is build battle, where there's a theme and players have a time limit to create a build, using the kind of creative tools that reflects the theme, and then everyone teleports into each other's chambers and votes on which one they think is the best. And that's the game. Nice. So it does, that does function. People do seem to vote and play in the spirit of the thing.
Yeah, because that's common in board games, but not so much in digital games, is it? Like, there's loads of board games where, like, there is no algorithmic way to judge who was best, and so you just have the other players vote, and like, oh yeah, your explanation was best, or
we did it with Champion
the Animal
of the
one.
Wild, yeah.
It's very much that. And video games don't usually do it. I guess they're probably scared. Like, if you're playing with total strangers, they assume that people are just going to be dicks. But most of those games are designed so that you can't really be that much of a dick. You could, I guess you give everyone, I think most of them, you have to pick a winner, and it can't be yourself. And so
go pick someone. Yeah.
I assume it's like a numbers thing as well, though, because it's, if the game wasn't hugely popular, or if the player base started to drop off, or was in different time zones, then you wouldn't be able to get the results of the thing, and that would be rather I guess a stumbling block. But I think for stuff that's big, like Hypixel, or for stuff that's because Google occasionally put out things like that, don't they, to teach their machine learning stuff, how to read images and things. So there was that thing quite recently, I think, where the idea was for you to draw something, and that Google would say what it was, or the algorithm would tell you what it was. And I can't remember exactly what the game was, or whether it was just a kind of, does the thing recognize what you're doing? But it was definitely, it was giving it more than enough information to actually learn something about basic depiction, or about, how humans boil particular concepts down to a few lines, which was kind of interesting. I wonder what they've done with that. Probably figured out how to scan my face or something.
You could probably make a good art judging algorithm. Well, I say good, by, Google image reverse search the thing the user drew, and then from those results, look at the first 100,000 and see how many of them are mentioned an actual artist who has a Wikipedia page, and then judge those artists by notoriety from their own search results. And then the more like a more famous artist your thing looks, the more points you get.
Oh, good God. That sounds horrendous. That sounds like the surefire way to only end up with cack.
Or lame copies of just very famous,
populist,
sunflowers over and over again.
You'll just end up with tea towels with water lilies on them, won't you?
That is more or less how content on the internet sort of propagates. Yeah, don't put Google in charge of that. I can talk about algorithms trying to solve problems and sort of failing if you're willing to segue off this topic. So as we were approaching, obviously we recorded the podcast a little bit late this week. And one of the reasons for that is that, I have mostly just been playing Fire Emblem when I've been playing games this week. And so I didn't want to talk about that again. So I was looking for something, today I was genuinely looking for something new. Just, find a game, something interesting to talk about.
Did you turn to the Steam algorithm?
I did. Well, no, I mean, because we talked about it last time. Well, this is what we want to talk about. Because the last time you were on the pod pit, we talked about, I think, or maybe the time before that, we talked about the Steam Labs stuff as it was announced. And
then I promptly forgot about it.
And so we talked about the interactive recommender. We've gone through all of this, right? The interactive recommender is the system that has two sliders, one for age of game and one for sort of popularity versus sort of cult.
Age of game could definitely be a game.
Age of game
sounds like a game.
Nicheness, yeah, and it's nicheness, and based on your history, and you can tweak these sliders. So I was sort of operating in the niche and new kind of side of things, because that seemed to be the thing that would provide something I'd be interested in talking about on this podcast. And what's kind of interesting about this process is previously when I was sort of tinkering with it, it was interesting to see what the recommendations were. Trying to use it for its intended purpose has been a bit of an adventure, and there's a bunch of reasons why it's not quite worked for me, and it kind of has in the end, but I had to kind of tell it what to tell me, which is not the point of a recommender.
Yeah.
And so some of the problems with it, I think, are very specific, or not specific to me, but limited to a smaller set of people. So for example, if you work on a game and that game is live and on Steam, so you're not running it in your own dev environment, you're running the Steam client, that's going to fuck up your algorithm forever. So I work on HackMud, and HackMud is, I run the game client from Steam. So that means that it accounts for a lot of my playtime on Steam. And I got to the point where, regardless of where I set my kind of, I found that the sweet spot for the sliders was pretty much sort of new to 6 months to a year old, and 2/3 niche to fully niche, but you needed to give it a little bit of room, or else it didn't throw up some things that were actually interesting. And then I had to make extensive use of the blocking specific tags. So I had to block.
I thought you could actually block a game now. Like, can't you eliminate a game from the algorithm?
Not that I could see. You can block a tag, but doesn't seem to be an easy way to block a game.
I swear I thought I saw someone tweeting about that. I'll have to look it up, because it might help you in this moment.
Click it on the side. Basically what I did is then I went through and I blocked programming and hacking games, because there was so many of them. I'm
sick of that shit.
It was because there's loads of them as well. Like, there were way more of those games than I thought there were. There's all of the Zachtronics sort of games and all of their children, basically. And then other issues arose. Like we at one point borrowed a Vive.
Right, yeah.
Which was set up on my PC. So at some point, Steam knows I had a Vive plugged in. What it doesn't know is I don't have one anymore.
Right.
However, that means that it's going to throw VR stuff right to the top of the list, because a lot of VR games are quite niche because they're VR games. So take out the hacking games, and it's just a flood of VR games. So I had to then block the VR tag as well. And then I also blocked the early access tag, because I don't know how to play early access games, because that was then a flood of games that were extremely raw that I might be interested in eventually. But so that's 4 tags blocked. At that point, I found that it got super, I don't know why, but what I was kind of in the mood for was something kind of either turn-based or strategy-ish, or kind of, card-based, like something a little bit more sedate. But all it wanted me to play at this point were retro first-person shooters, the kind of things Tom Senior were talking about in the last pod, and twin-stick shooters.
Right.
And bullet hell games. All variants on arcade shooters, just wall-to-wall. Some of them were roguelikes, some of them weren't, but other than that, just all that. And I'm not sure exactly why that is. It might be because I reviewed so many of them for PC Gamer.
I was going to say, probably all of the million hours of Super Hexagon and all of your Ikaruga kind of.
Yeah, probably, but still.
Shenanigans.
So then I had to kind of try and block shooters.
Oh,
and this is what I mean by having to basically tell it what to tell me. I blocked so much in order to get to a point where I was seeing things that I was interested in. It somewhat defeated the point. However, this was sort of ultimately a more gratifying way of leafing through menus than menus are, because it was sort of random every time what I was going to get. It's annoying when you click through to a game and then click back, it clears all your filters. So I had to reconstruct all the filters every time, particularly as the list got longer for like what I didn't want to see.
Could you not tab, like, as in click tab?
Not in the Steam client.
Bleh.
So with that as a caveat, so that sort of highlighted to me that like, there's, obviously there are things that are specific to my situation of people working games. But I think also there's a bit of a problem with like, it's quite good at recommending things that are like things you've played, but often, and I don't think I'd be alone in saying I quite want things that I like, but haven't played. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, I've played a lot of very good twin stick shooter roguelikes from, you know, or similar. So Risk of Rain or Teleglitch or any of those games. Just because I've played lots of them doesn't mean that the next indie game I buy on Steam will be one of them.
Well, I think this is the problem with my problem with the algorithm system that Tom is recommending. I was kind of like, no, it will funnel everything down the same pathway.
What, my art judging one?
Yeah, it's just Picasso all the way down. Oh, God. But I think, something that I was actually thinking about off the back of, did you see there was a tweet that did the rounds where somebody who worked over at Netflix was saying, you know, I think there were complaints in the wake of the cancellation of
Tuca and Bertie?
Yeah. And, you know, this sense of like, not being told about things. Like, what does that mean?
I started watching Tuca and Bertie because everyone was so upset about being cancelled.
Yeah. Like, because I had never seen anything about it until the internet was.
I think I had, at the time, I was like, what is this show everyone's suddenly talking about? And then when I watched it, and then after I watched it, I thought, oh wait, someone did mention this to me like 6 months ago and I ignored them.
Okay. But I think, off the back of that chat, someone from Netflix tweeted about, you know, what would help people? What does it mean when you say you want to be able to discover or be told or, you know, that kind of thing? I can't remember the exact wording. And I actually replied with a kind of, Netflix doesn't seem to know what to do with me. It keeps trying to just recommend me either the same things over and over or things within the same niche. And like, I have no interest in them, so I don't click on them. So it doesn't seem to think, oh, I'll show you something different. It just keeps showing me those things until I interact with them or until I search for something. And so my suggestion was, I want
Take
the
a hint.
option. Well, someone replied to my response with that, like they want an option to just say, I will never watch this. Please stop showing it to me.
Want that.
But my thing that I want is show me 10 random things. Just show me something, because there is so much. It's like, we've got hundreds of thousands of shows on this service. And I'm like, you show me 3 of them.
Yeah.
And they're all Netflix originals and I don't care. And then you show me things I've seen before and you say, do you want to watch them again? It's like, probably, if that's my choice, if those are all of my options, I
always find that just go to Netflix. This shows me, 50 things, 35 of which it showed me every day for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And I'm still no more interested in watching them. And then sometimes I think that something might be on Netflix and I go to search for it. And as you search, it does that auto complete thing. And I type the letter O and it shows me like 10 movies I really want to see that I had no idea were on Netflix. Like, what the hell? I didn't know these were here.
Or
and then try OM and suddenly, oh my God, like 5 more that I'm really interested in. And like, try B. So that's how I find things on Netflix now. I just type a random character into the search.
Oh
Suddenly I get like all the stuff I actually want to watch.
I want the option with any of these services to ask them, like, what do you think I'll hate? Like, show me, show me the opposite of me. Like, and they might be, I wouldn't do it on Steam because you're going to get some grim stuff down at the bottom of that well. But yeah, I think also in Netflix's defense in our particular case, there is no way any algorithm could reconcile the fact that we share an account.
No, but you don't share my account.
Oh, we do, so we do on the main TV, but not.
Yeah, on the main TV, that's what yours is hooked up to, but mine is just mine.
Yeah.
And, like, it hasn't learnt that I just don't want any of the things that I haven't clicked on, and so that means that I keep clicking on the same things, and then it's like, oh, well, she clearly just wants to watch the same things, and it's this weird self-perpetuating problem where I'm just like, show me a way out. Like, please show me a way out, because I want to actually see different things, but all you want to do is show me bullshit, really. But, and the other thing is like, because I find it really annoying when I type something, I can't remember if this is Netflix or whether this is, what's it called? Now TV or something. But you know, when you type the name of a thing and it auto completes it as if it has it. And then it's like, we don't have that. However, here are some similar things. And you're like, do you know what? do you know what you can do with it? But yeah, so I think I would really like it if Steam had the option to, you know, just show, like, to sort of shake you out of that.
Yeah.
Or like just say, you know. I
think I've mentioned this before, but I am a little bit sad that I've broken Spotify's Always Excellent algorithm because I use it for other things, because I use it to soundtrack role-playing games with my friends, and I use it for, you know, other purposes. It's just, it's fucked it, like, completely.
Spotify varies a lot week to week. I have some weeks where I'm just like, the Discover Weekly is really good, and, well, really good for me is like 2 out of every 10 tracks are good.
Yeah, but it's good.
Which is, that is great, because it's giving me like 40 of them, and I'll get into like 8 new things. And then other weeks it's like every single thing is like, I have to skip it. I can't even make it through the track. Like, don't play anything like this ever again.
Yeah. So my current problem with Spotify is that I only use it for podcasts. From the second podcast got added, podcasts were what I use it for, and listening to Metallica on deadline, and I no longer do that. So
is your Discover Weekly just podcast now?
Well, this is the thing. It doesn't, like, the only way that you can access podcasts is either it recommends them, or you search for them, or you go to the browse tab and then select podcasts and stuff. Like, it doesn't have, as far as I know, it doesn't have podcast playlist. It doesn't have discover for podcasts. It doesn't have, you know,
that would be hard to do.
No, I don't think it would. I think that if you listen to, for example, a lot of, you know, comedy themed stuff, you could just say, well, here's 5 comedy podcasts. Give them a go. You know, by different, or like if you really like one particular publisher, it's like, here are some of their other stuff.
I think it would just be because it would work a very different way to the way the rest of Spotify algorithm works. So I can understand that there would have to be new technology. I think
so, but it's something that I'm feeling the absence of.
Yeah.
The thing I desperately want with podcasts is, I'm very often in a situation where I just played a game like Outer Wilds, and I just want to hear like anyone talking about Outer Wilds. I don't care who the hell it is, even though I don't really like them.
We'll do an Outer Wilds podcast eventually, Tom. Jesus Christ.
Wow, way to hint.
But you can't, like, you know, we tag our at least our blog posts with all the names of the games that we talk about, but I don't think, like, you know, iTunes or Pocket Casts has a way of searching that kind of thing. And I wish the podcast, like, infrastructure was set up for that, so I could just see, like, who is talking about the Outer Worlds, and I'll listen to, if there are 10 podcasts talking about it, I will listen to 10, those episodes of 10 different podcasts, and I'm sure, like, 3 of those would be podcasts I then listen to from then on.
It's weird, because Pocket Casts, like, especially Pocket Casts Discover section, that can trick you into thinking there's only, like, 40 podcasts in the entire universe, and most of them are about true crime, and it's like, do you know what? No. But sometimes I'll put in a search term that I know is for a podcast that I've heard about, and it still doesn't reliably find it. It's like, no, I've never heard of that. Like, what are you talking about?
So, I just wanted to pull things back. I did actually find a game at the end.
Oh, sorry.
Like,
I thought that was the game.
No. I actually found 2. I want to return to one of them probably next week, because one of them is super interesting. So I wanted to put that as a caveat before we got into the problems of algorithms generally. Like, I did, through this method, eventually find something that I didn't know about and I actually quite like. And it seems like, as soon as I saw it for £4 and bought it, this is Islanders. I saw that actually a lot of my friends have played it.
I've played that.
Yeah, which was
I have heard of this.
Kind of nice, in that I genuinely had missed it for whatever reason. And so I've been playing a little bit of this today, and it did, in the end, tick all of the boxes, but that's sort of not the algorithm's doing, because I knew what I was looking for, and I just tweaked things and banned things until it showed me things like this.
If you had emailed Tom and said, I'm in the mood to play something, what should I play? Would you have recommended Islanders? Like, what?
No, probably not. I kind of forgotten about it, to be honest. You would have had to, like, I would have suggested like 93 things and you have to ban each of them.
Yeah. No,
like, okay, no. Islanders.
Yeah.
Have you played a twin stick shooter?
Another one?
I'd just be like, who played Heat Signature? Who played Gunpoint?
It was trying to get me to play Morph Blade, Tom. But I'm not giving you £4.
It's doing God's work.
Play Floating Point.
Yeah, I didn't, but no, so Island is actually really nice. And, and I haven't played tons of it yet, so it's not going to be an extensive review or anything, but, for £4, a lovely thing. So basically, it's a, very kind of, lightweight, city building resource management, in the sense of sort of planning game, basically. And, the way it works is this: you get it looks lovely. sort of, nice, sort of textureless, voxely, atmospheric, graphics. Looks, for a game that's procedurally generated, has a little bit of a sort of Monument Valley sort of vibe to it. And you have a little procedurally generated island with your little chunky kind of, plateaus and beaches and things like that, and trees and rocks and monoliths occasionally. And you, the job is to build a little functioning settlement. And you do this by, there's no, resources really, just points. But you get like an inventory of stuff. And so, and you pick, you always have like a binary choice of basically a bag of buildings. And so you'll pick, farming or, lumber or something like that, or brewing or shamans or town planning or whatever. And you pick one of these choices and, you get a big pile of buildings in your inventory to then place. And a lot of them have sort of adjacency rules and things like that. So and obviously they take up a certain amount of space, but they're all placed in sort of 3D, sort of fairly, analog kind of way. So you can rotate them and try and get them to fit, and try and get overlapping areas of benefit and so on. Every time you do this, you gain points and certain things like redundant mills and that kind of thing, which I think is a Blake thing.
Yeah, very. I was thinking that.
Might cost you some points, so it might reduce the efficiency of something. So it's about creating these sort of overlapping circles to get you maximum points out of the thing you're building.
Sounds like Teamfight Tactics.
Imagine a slow, combat-free Teamfight Tactics within the confines of a limited and randomly generated environment. So you're not always going to have ideal ways of laying everything out. And when you do this, you fill up a bar, and the bar needs more points every time it levels up. We basically level up. Every time you level up, you get access to a new bag of things. And you're also filling up points towards getting access to a new island. And then when you get access to that new island, you can either click to go there immediately, or you can keep trying to earn points on the island that you're on. If you can go to a new island, then eventually you'll run out of things to do, and you go to a new generated island and start again. And the game ends when you fail to generate enough points from a single new set of buildings to level up. So you always have to level up with what you're given, and you always have to be setting yourself up to level up. And then when you fail, that you get a high score based on how many islands you managed to build up and how far you managed to get, and then you're back to the start. And it's actually really nice. It's sort of like a fast sort of, it'd be wrong to call it kind of arcadey, but it's probably as arcadey as you can make something with SimCity's kind of fundamental logic, or that kind of, or Populous maybe is a better example. It's quite fun. It's just nice to sort of, tinker with the layout. I will say this, seaweed farms, they're a fucking trap. They're a fucking trap. If you get given a seaweed farm as your first choice of 2 in a new island, just say no. It's not worth it.
I've never even had that option. Would you say seaweed farms are the Ionic Spark of the island as well?
No, they're the opposite, because Ionic Spark will win you a lot of early game victories, right. Whereas this will cost you the entire run. And the reason for this
Does it not come into its own later? Is it not OP in the late game?
They are all right in the late game. And what they've done to balance seaweed farms is, so landscapes aren't always going to be favorable to different kinds of buildings, right? Like, if you have lots of flat areas, then farms and towns are good. If you have, other things are more efficient with a smaller number of pieces, so sort of isolated rocky plateaus and things can work in that environment. Seaweed farms their main strength is, it's an island. You're always going to have the sea. So you're going to have a lot of coast, right? You're never going to have more of anything than you have coast, basically. So because of this, so almost everything gains, well, some things need to not be near things of their like, but like farms, normal farms, for example, every field you place gains a bonus from being near another field. So that is obviously going to encourage you to lay out your fields in kind of closely packed rows. And then they can sit next to each other and benefit. You put a mill nearby, you're off to the races. Your first seaweed farm is -1 point. They lose you points to place them, but they gain quite a lot from adjacency with each other.
Right.
And then from, the seaweed farm building, the main one that you kind of put on the coast dangling over the seaborne seaweed farms. What this means is, if you only have them, they'll get you about 18 points, and the first point threshold on a new island is always 20. So they will literally just lose you the game then and there. You literally can't get enough points out of them, I believe, to win. So them offering them to you seems like a trap. If you've played Islanders and you understand that they're not a trap and I'm bad at this, let me know. But, yeah.
You're literally asking for it now. You're gonna get Seaweed Farm well actually.
It's fine. If, honestly, just, bring me your waterborne pedants.
A Kelpdesk.
Hey!
I was trying to think of a kelp one and I didn't make it.
But yeah, you said you'd played it, Tom.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, and the run aspect of it, like you build an island and then you can move on to the next one, that part didn't, I remember just sort of stopping. I was just like, okay, I don't want to carry on with this version. I can't remember how it works. Like, once you have an island and you build some stuff on it, once you've built a bunch of really nice stuff and you've laid it out in a sort of pleasing way, but there is a way you could milk more points out of this island by just placing a bunch of shit in all the gaps and messing it up. Does it incentivize you to do that, or is it, or not?
I think it can help you get closer to a point threshold for the next island.
I had this dim memory of sort of like having this thing where I'm like, this is nice, but the mechanics are pushing me to fuck it up now. Like, the mechanics are pushing me to just milk everything I can.
Yeah, that might be the case. I haven't played enough of it to kind of do well.
That's what the Happy Home Academy used to do. It's like, have you got a full set of this? And it's like, well, it's shit. I don't want it. But, I mean, I want my otter bonus. Like, so here we go.
There was also, I had a weird situation because, the shaman's hut, shaman seems to love being really far away from everyone. And I think near certain natural features, like maybe a plateau or something, that was nowhere near my cities. And so I put the shaman miles from anywhere. And then I built this quite, popular city, loads of little houses and farms and stuff all on my lowland. And then up on my highland was this one shaman hut. And then when I came to build like some of the more luxurious mansions, the build requirements for them were basically the same as the shaman. Like, they didn't need to be near city centers or anything. And they wanted to be near these luxury resources. And I think they even want to be near shaman houses. Like, they have a bonus from being near shaman houses. So the shaman district got gentrified. Like, there's just like one shaman hut and then mansions surrounding it. Where, like, I have to imagine all these like super rich people are just like, hey shaman, what's up today?
You know what? This is goop. This is a game of goop.
That's where Gwyneth Paltrow lives.
Yeah, exactly.
And now the mansions.
The rich people just come flocking.
It was just in the newsletter one day, and then now they're there, they're having steams, they're just, it's too much. Ugh.
I was curious, it seemed to, it seemed like there was some asymmetry to some of these adjacency things. So like, when you, place, so I don't think this is the actual rule, but let's say that, a shaman hut doesn't want to be near any houses, but a mansion does want to be near a shaman hut. After the shaman hut is down, I don't think you can like lose any points on the shaman hut. No, you don't lose.
It's always when you place.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So there's some weird sort of like order of operations thing going on there, where if you do it in the right order, it doesn't matter that these two things are close.
Yeah, that's the thing is it's quite toy-like. I quite like it for that reason. Like, it's got very nice sound effects, and when you gain points, it's got this nice sort of like blibbity blobbity kind of point funnel. Blibbity blobbity. It's got a good blibbity blobbity points funnel. Yep. That's all I need. And Tom knows exactly what I mean. Because it does. And so it is like, it's got more game to it than some things like this, which are just about, but it does have that sort of Zen toy kind of feel to it, where you're just placing things and gaining the bonuses. And it's like, it's not particularly, I think one of the only things I don't like about it is treated like a bad thing when a run ends, because you have failed, and it does a kind of like, wah, wah kind of noise. But it doesn't feel like a mistake. It just feels like, well, I guess it was time for my civilization to fail. Back in the ocean.
This is something I like about Evergarden, which is this, hex grid, puzzle game about planting plants and about using them to sort of seed other plants. And your run is always going to end at some point. And when it ends, that's when it sort of, all the things you have built count as points. And so it pretty much always feels like just a different kind of victory. It's not really like, oh, I died. And now here is the actual endpoint of my garden. It's full. I can't build anything more. And now I get the points for all that stuff. And so it does a good job of like making the ending positive. It feels like this could have done that as well.
But I do like it, and I will play a little bit more of it, and I may even just leave it running to make the algorithm easier to deal with in the future.
I think I might buy it as well, so it can mess with my recommendations.
Jolly good.
For £4, 4 spondoolies.
I wonder if they'd let you like, cause Because if you play anything off Steam, obviously that's not going to count. And so if there's a genre of game that you tend to buy on itch instead of Steam,
well, that's the thing.
It's going to skew your...
It can only tell you about stuff that's on Steam. So it's kind of like, for me, that's like, well, I mean, you then can't take into account anything I do in the League of Legends client. You have no sense of what I'm doing over in Epic, which is mostly, I will admit, below zero, Subnautica. And like, you know, even just like, I wonder if things like the Ubisoft client or whatever can, you know, like I wonder if at any point it will try and figure out API stuff, you know, like whether there will be some kind of, if you plug this thing in or if you log in using whatever, then, you know, there can be some kind of reciprocal like thing. Cause I wonder whether at some point it would be in Ubisoft's interest to have Steam be like, have you tried Rainbow Six? And Steam loves data. So like there's a kind of...
To be fair, that's the number one game Steam wants me to play.
You know what I mean, though. Like stuff that isn't on there. Like I don't know.
StarCraft.
I can't think. Unravel.
Yeah,
is that? Yeah,
probably is.
Yeah, GOG Galaxy 2 is this like all-in-one thing, right? Where it can run your Steam games and it can run your Blizzard games and everything, and it can track that stuff. So in theory, they could have the best data set in terms of reach. I remember when the interactive recommender came out, a lot of people were saying, wow, this is really good because it's recommending me all stuff I already own on console. Which is like, okay, I'm not going to buy it, but on the other hand, well done, because that is something I genuinely like.
I think I would always come down on the side of I would prefer that it doesn't know what happens elsewhere in my life. Like, cool, it's recommended me something that it can't have worked out I already own somewhere. So one of my, you know, buffers, my tech buffers is working. It's like it can't listen to me. It can't like get into my mind somehow at the moment. I know. I'm fighting such a losing battle.
Should we do questions?
Yeah. And I wanted to give a shout out, as we do, to everybody, Ryan and who was the other one? Ryan and Julius, who both, emailed in, to correct the correction of the pronunciation of the game Tohu. The reason I don't know is because, both of these, correspondents sent us emails, with links to videos where this game word is correctly pronounced. However, while that's a reasonable thing to do, the flaw with this is at the part of this process where we check the questions, we've already got our recording equipment plugged in. And when our recording equipment is plugged in, I can't output any audio from my PC except via the I can't basically because the amp is on.
And so also we can't have our phones on because otherwise it makes that like interference noise.
So, and either way the emails would be in that direction. So for that reason, we haven't been able to listen to them. So it will remain a mystery. And this may be a way of curtailing the, last week we talked about how to guarantee information on the internet is to just be wrong and wait for the correction to arrive. I think the way to, curtail any subsequent interaction is to simply not hear it and be confused. I'm sure that there is a correct pronunciation out there somewhere and we can find out after this episode is recorded, but that's too late for the people listening to this who are no doubt already halfway through an email about how I've just pronounced it wrong like 3 different times.
Just assume we know now.
We probably know now. Thank you for letting us know. Our first email really, because it's more of a perspective, I guess, than a question, comes from a Nona man who writes, "Hello, your podding keeps me sane. Thank you kindly. I'm an actor and I've worked as a mocap and voice actor for a few AAA and a couple of indie titles. I've also worked a fair bit in film and TV and done a ton of BBC4 radio plays. In my experience, the most striking thing about the contrast between video game acting and other mediums is that the standard that is expected and accepted in recording sessions is by and large much lower. You sometimes get the lines not just on the day, but actually only in the room when you're recording, no time to prepare or finesse. And then you blaze through page after page of barks and scenes with few retakes and little idea of context. Nowhere near enough time to develop something with a high level of naturalism. It's often all you can do not to make it sound actively bad. Now, there are many wonderful exceptions to this, things like The Last of Us, etc., and I've had the privilege of working on games which are more like that too. In other words, careful, thoughtful direction from professionals used to working with actors and getting good performances, but they are not the norm. As far as I can see, until most video game developers decide to invest in achieving the level of acting you see in decent quality film and TV, it will not appear. And equally, of course, until most players start to value it, it won't happen either. At the moment, it seems it's a minority of gamers, of whom I am one, who value the standard of acting in games. And by that I don't mean they enjoy awful performances, rather that most people are content if it sounds roughly in the right ballpark. It's interesting what you were saying about how to create realistic performances from actors with vocab. In that sense, BBC Radio 4 has been doing these things for years. I did a fair number of radio plays in the Archers studio, which is packed full of Foley kit and equipment, including an amazing staircase to nowhere with 4 different surfaces from concrete to wood. But beyond just creating sound effects that integrate with the performance as a simple matter of course, you always do your best to do physically what the script describes, so it sounds like just like what the script describes, whether that be running or jumping or snogging. Although with the latter, you often sort of suck on your own hand while trying not to make eye contact with your bow in the scene for fear of corpsing.
Chris, try it.
I'm making a weird noise.
Well, I think because you were making full eye contact with me while you were doing that. Maybe that's the problem. Sorry.
Yes, I should have been looking at Tom.
I'm glad you didn't.
I can even remember one time nearly passing out from my efforts to climb an imaginary tree and forgetting to breathe. Now that's dedication to the craft. Slow down, Willem Dafoe. Anywho, all I'm saying is I personally wish that more video game developers would work with film, TV and radio pros / directors / producers and invest a wee bit more time and money into getting good performances. It's entirely achievable and would make interminable and exhausting cutscenes and world building that's done so much these days not an almost deal-breaking chore to sit through, at least for this old thesp. All the very best, a Nona man.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Just thought that was an interesting perspective.
Yeah. Playing Odyssey, like, I mean, games these days are just so big and they have so much in them that they're everything at once. And so Odyssey has some great voice acting and some great moments and some moments of subtlety and brilliant digital performances where like the actual like motion capture and animation stuff is really selling it. And then it has like, if you rescue someone from a cage in that game, they'll just say like, "You're an amazing hero, thank you," and they run away in just the most fake, absurd way. And I literally was recently like letting a bunch of people out of cages because it's a thing I do a lot in that game, and just thinking if this was a movie or something, people would be literally walking out of the cinema at this point. Like it's so bad.
Yeah, right. This is the thing, right? So I was having this thought when I was reading this email. Obviously, the suggestion posited to make the standard higher and to improve things is a good one. However, what we've established is the standard is actually really low, which seems like an asset opportunity that isn't being seized upon, right? All these game developers go out and they get loads of extras in. They get like, I think there was a stat like Red Dead Redemption 2 is the highest employer of actors in the New York area for the years in which it was in production. It's like 1,200 actors or something. And most of them are just going to go like, howdy, and then go, ah! And there's like their entire day in the studio. And that's all they get out of those people. And then there's obviously a commitment to just having a lot of that and having it all be different, which is sort of notable in its way. But surely this is an area where something like the Unity Asset Store could step in, right? You already have extensive music and sound effects libraries. I mean, maybe this already exists to some extent, but how far away from Bark libraries are we really? Because if the line was like, "Thanks, you're an amazing hero," then just record it once. Doesn't matter if
I can't believe you killed me with a sword of haste.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, wow, you've really performed this task for me. Honestly.
Yeah. To be honest, a lot of these, you can, like, game dialogue is usually done in, like, a Google Doc spreadsheet or an Excel spreadsheet. Right. And it is, a case where, like, for this event, we need at least 5 different lines. And so some writer has to fill in those cells, and then some actor has to read those things. And it really doesn't work in practice because you're going to do that thing more than 5 times. So you're going to hear those again and again. And given that, like having 5 really specific takes on this and hearing each of them like 2 to 3 times is terrible because you hear them even twice. And it's like, why are you saying the exact same thing as that guy in the exact same voice? Whereas if they just said like, "Thanks," I can hear that 100 times. I will never be like, "Why are you saying thanks? The other guy said thanks. What's wrong with you?"
"I can't believe you've shot me on my birthday." Another perfect box. I kind of want to just do this.
I can't believe you shot me on my birthday, the 26th of April, 1946.
The war's over, you madman. We've got a little scene going here. I quite like to see the opposite, like a game where you just do extremely specific barks and then repeat them. But no, what I'm saying is, yeah, you're right. These things are generic. And I mean, I'm maybe going to do the field of video game writers out of a job here because, you know, what I'm saying is, you know, let's automate this. You know, does the industry need a lot of people writing grenade? Or, you know, there's a pineapple behind this bin or whatever. Like, you know, you're, I don't know, 18 different versions of there's a grenade down by the time you get to that one. Does that need to happen? Or could we just have an asset library where it's just, you know, grenade yell male 30s?
Yeah.
But don't quite a lot of people do that? Like there are some open source libraries or at least relatively cheap libraries for particular sound effects.
Well, yeah, I mean, I mentioned
so I'm
that.
assuming that.
That's what I mean. But like, there are, but as far as I know, there isn't a huge video game box.
Like,
okay.
One problem could
I am
be...
mostly also joking.
Oh, okay. No, I was just kind of like, sorry. I wasn't in on the skit.
It is tough because although like 90% of what a guide is going to say is generic, if you're getting those generic lines from the asset library and then you need them to ever say something that's specific to your game, like the name of your character or something, and you don't have that line, they can't suddenly change voice for that.
Must have been space rats.
Or
Done.
even if like everything that they say that's incidental, like, ooh, or, ugh, or thanks. And then suddenly they're like, I need you to go on a mission to go to this thing, please, thank you. You know, and then you're like, what's happened to you? And they're like, I've got a cold.
You can fix this. Jeff Lyon says, I've got a mission for you. The details are in this letter. There. That's the only buck you need.
Which will be read in your own voice.
No, exactly. In your own time as well. Yeah.
Off you pop.
I mean, all this said, like, Oblivion did both many, many different characters all having clearly the same voice actor, and those characters changing voice actor when you talk to them about something else.
Yeah. I suppose this was also actually the issue with the arrow in the knee line, is that it was too specific for as generic as it was. Like, obviously that's a tiresome meme from 8 years ago, but nonetheless, it became that because, yeah, it's like there's an art to, same with the sweet roll thing. Like, how do you write suitably generic that you can bear that a lot of repetition and not have it be the same phrase?
The thing that really blows my mind is when they have a really specific line like that, and then you'll hear it in like 3 different actors' voices. It's like, really? You could afford the studio time for multiple actors to record this, but you couldn't afford the writer time to just rephrase it a little bit, just so that it's not, because that completely breaks the, like hearing the same line multiple times is like, it's an unfortunate reality that we sort of are super used to. But then when you hear a different actor say the same line word for word, it's just totally like reality is shattered now. I don't know what the hell is going on.
I used to be a carpenter like you until I got a hammer in the eye. Indeed. Thank you for this insight though. It was useful. And I hope it happens. I don't know.
I like the sound of the staircase.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Oh, fine.
Joseph writes, Dear Tate and MoMA. That is quite good.
Oh yeah, that's good.
If you met someone in the year 2019, which is now, who was into paintings, they would not only have a comprehensive understanding of modern art, but also be able to speak at length on great works or artists from 500 plus years ago.
Would they?
The year is 2519. And you meet someone who is into games. Oh. This is a question. Thanks, Joseph. So the question really is, obviously games are a young medium, and it is currently feasible for someone to be a big nerd about almost all of it. Eventually, though, game will be old, and presumably in this posited future, Earth not on fire, or underwater. So, you know, what will it mean to be into games when games are a medium with the same kind of history that, I don't know, paintings have? Pip, art correspondent, reports.
Well, you heard me. I literally took issue with at least 2 of the basic premises of this thing, because I have a degree in art history, and I would say that people can be into painting and have not a bloody clue about modern art, and people can be into painting and have no idea even what old historical sort of masters' first names were. So I think both of those things, like, they're not prerequisites of being into painting.
Are there some like really big names in art who were totally unappreciated in their time? Like,
I mean, yeah. Yes.
I guess my question is which ones?
But, I mean, and this is like why I was also a little bit reticent about answering this, because I graduated quite a long time ago, Tom, and all of the names fell out of my head.
They were unappreciated in their time, then appreciated for a while, then unappreciated again after you've gotten your degree.
Yeah. But like, there's also, like, there's different, like, people will be appreciated in different political climates. Like, there are people who were very much appreciated by, for example, Soviet realism advocates from, that particular period of time, and then have completely fallen out of favour because nothing that they did has a resonance with modern audiences, apart from the people who are very interested in that time for particular reasons, like this sort of aggrandizing propaganda. It's like it's very hard to emotionally engage with in a way that is authentic, I would say. But so something that was interesting, because you read this out a little while ago, and I've been mulling it, which is also partly why I wasn't paying full attention to the audio thing, is that, like, the mechanisms by which people would get famous in that, Renaissance period, like you'd apprentice maybe, or and then you'd start doing commissions, particularly religious commissions, or for famous local families with a lot of money and things like that. And so, it was this thing where you were considered a very valuable commodity, and you could somehow raise the status of the people who you worked for. You would design the tomb of a pope, or you would paint a portrait and include like donor portraits of the people who commissioned the I don't know, like the deposition of Christ for an altarpiece or something. So you would squash your sort of the patron into the picture and sort of raise their status, and they would be known as this, person with these philanthropic or, religious sensibilities. And so to take that to the current thing, like, maybe the games that would fulfill a similar function would be the ones like Minecraft, which allow you to be more... They both allow the players to inject something of themselves into it, but also, crucially, they have such a massive footprint, they would be hard to erase. Like, they have the coverage on mainstream news websites, they are all over YouTube, they are, they are names that everybody knows, and that won't just fall out of the popular memory just because you can't play on the platform that they were invented on.
Yeah.
Whereas I think a lot of stuff that is very critically acclaimed, as soon as that platform becomes absolutely unreachable, and if copyright law means that you can't emulate it really, or, like if society goes in that direction further, then once it's done, it will disappear from view. Whereas I think games like Minecraft, or games with name recognition, if not, specific episode recognition, like Call of Duty, will remain as touchstones that people know and will reference, because they have littered the pages of the world. But the other thing I would say is, it might be that the people that get remembered are the corporate behemoths like Google and Facebook, and games that were on those platforms, because those platforms will be what's remembered, like in the way that the Catholic Church has heroed all of these artists who would paint these spectacular ceilings or altarpieces or triptychs or, you know, like, icons and things like that. Like, maybe it will be things that Amazon's web services power, or things that, you know, that Google, because they will be the things that are kept alive, because they will be the things that are not allowed to die.
I wonder if, like, an interesting litmus test might be like, if you didn't play the game and don't care about the actual play experience itself, to what extent can you get away from it? And if you can't get away from it, even without having played it, that's like Minecraft, you know, you don't have to have played Minecraft to just feel its influence everywhere, to hear it being talked about everywhere. And therefore that is probably culturally significant and will be remembered. And I would probably say the same about Dark Souls, in that, like, you know, I have virtually no experience actually playing it, but its influence is just you cannot get away from it. Just everyone is, you know, the number of developers citing Dark Souls as an influence is sort of about 70% of all of them.
Yeah. I mean, it might also just be esports stuff as well, or at least stuff that translates well to streaming, because I think we will keep the ability to play video longer than we keep the ability to boot up a PS4 or, you know, use Windows 10, right? Like, that stuff will endure.
They will tell the story of the teenage millionaire in the before time.
But you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, totally. Our final question for this podcast comes from Mitchell, who writes, Dear Crate and Crowbar, I've been making my very own video game thanks to Tom F for his video tutorials.
Yay.
Yay, indeed.
Sorry to throw you off.
Yay, Tom. I'm trying to make a grid-based, turn-based, strategy-based game, but I've been stuck on the decision between square and hexagonal grids. Hexes seem to be a better approximation of free movement, and you don't have to deal with the diagonal problem, but square grids are probably easier to program and design around. What side of the fence do you fall on? What about other grids? Triangles, diamonds, non-uniform grids? Maybe I'll just give up and use all of them. Thanks for reading each and everybody, Mitchell.
Yeah, that's a big topic. The short answer for me is that square grids are probably easier, because, like, the ways that you store things, positions, coding wise, are super simple for square grids. It's just a 2D array and it's just done, and it's inherent in the language you're using and the structure of the code you're using. That will all be inherently supported. Hex grids, there are ways, like, I've made a hex grid game, and I read years before, I'd been following this blog that called Red Blob Games, which is a really good blog for, like, explaining some deep technical issues, like how do you procedurally generate landscapes using, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, but Voronoi randomness, noise. And this person has a whole chapter on how you make a hex grid, how you convert it into a sort of 2D array, and how you give coordinates to a hex grid. Because, you know, in the normal sense, you kind of can't, because, like, depending on how you orient it, there might be vertical rows of hexes, but the horizontal rows of hexes are kind of bumpy. They go up and down. So in column 2, these hexes are exactly between the row 1 and row 2 of the previous one. And so it's the worst case scenario for assigning, like, a really logical, intuitive number to where it is. And there are ways to do it, but it's a pain in the ass. With Morphblade, which is my hex-based game, I literally just didn't do it. I just didn't have a grid. That sounds kind of bizarre, but, like, there's no array data structure for where things are stored in there. Everything just knows how far a hex should be away from it and what the possible angles to look in are. And so if I need to check two things are adjacent, rather than looking at a 2D array, I just measure the distance between them in, like, actual pixels, and then say, with a certain tolerance, like, is it within 1.1 times what I expect it to be and 0.9 times what I expect it to be? There are programmers listening to this who are curling their toes, like, no, you can't do that. That's terrible. But I did, and it worked. So fuck you.
Yeah, because I was thinking, cause with a hex grid, surely, I say surely in the most sort of irritating way to game programmers, but would you not be able to do, like you said, with angles, like, because it's 60 degrees would be every, you know, you would change to a new face of the hex, and so, you know, you'd just be like, if a thing is at 60 degrees separation, then that's adjacent, or, you know, like as in if
well,
there
you
are
need to measure
two
distance
things,
as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, there are like abilities in Morphblade that like, if I'm in a straight line with this person on a hex grid, then I can
But that
attack
feels
them.
like manageable trigonometry.
Yeah, that's
right?
easy. It's just angles.
Okay.
But yeah, I didn't try and fit them into an array because I knew I would get confused about like, this thing is at 1-1 and this thing is at 1-2. I can't immediately picture in my head what that looks like. Is it above it or below it? And that kind of stuff. And so it just measures it. And it's, not worth it really. The reason I did it with Morphblade was that it was explicitly, riffing on Imbroglio, which is a square grid-based game, and Hoplite, which is a hex-based game. And I was interested in like, there are certain moves you can do on a hex grid that are kind of cool that you can't do on a square grid. Like you can move past somebody in a single cell change. Like if you just move to an adjacent cell in Hoplite, there's an attack where you slice them as you go past them. And you can't do that on a square grid because if you only move one cell, you didn't move past anybody because they were either in a line with your last position or your current position. It is tricky. The questioner asks about the diagonal problem, which is that on a square grid, things that are, you know, directly above or below and to the left and right are one distance away. And then things that are diagonal to you are 1.4 times that distance. And so that can look weird, but honestly, it's not as much of a problem as it sounds.
I think this comes into its own as an issue when you have, any, like Fire Emblem has this, there's a bunch of games, all of, apart from Teamfight Tactics, which uses hexes, all of the other, auto battlers have this, like, when you have abilities or spells or whatever it is in your strategy game that have an area of effect, it is, particularly if the area effect emanates from a point, it is often much more intuitive what that means on a hex grid than on a square grid. Because, like, the oldest question in the book for any square grid-based strategy game, whether that's on a tabletop or in a video game, is do diagonals count as adjacency?
Yeah.
And that's, like, and if they do, then, you know, what would be a circular AoE in any other game becomes a square. Because that's how that works.
Yeah.
But you can get something much closer to a circular AoE it becomes a hexagon, which is closer to a circle. Like, you know, in a hex grid system, and you have much more freedom with shapes, and also those shapes become much more intuitive to like where they'll go. Like there's a lot of, you know, Fire Emblem, which I've been playing a lot of, has an issue with its battalion abilities having sometimes some weird ranges and weird areas they affect. And they're only weird because they affect a certain distance of squares, but angles on you know, if something it can be done a certain number of squares in front of you and then certain number of squares either side of that in a T shape, that can feel much more arbitrary as an attempt to recreate a cone, for example, on a square grid than on a hex grid, particularly. And I think there are other reasons you would go with hexes. One of them is visibility. While it can be harder to arrange the hexes themselves, like, this is a big advantage Teamfight Tactics has, I think, is the visibility of who you've got and who they've got is actually a little bit easier because, a hex grid naturally creates a kind of isometric offset between where things are positioned. So on a square grid, it's really easy for units to stand directly in front of each other, or close to directly in front of each other, but that is not possible on a hex for obvious reasons. So yeah, sounds harder, but I think it's easier for games.
I would also suggest, have you considered some kind of 3D arena where there are pentagon spaces, much in the manner of a football? Because if you haven't, then either of the other options will immediately seem a lot simpler, you know?
Wait, so do pentagons tessellate on a sphere?
Well, isn't that how, yeah. Yes, they do.
Cool.
That's, well, I mean, not a sphere, but you end up with is it an icosahedron or a dodecahedron? It's a hedron of some kind. It has to be. But, yeah, so that's like footballs are generally like pentagons, I believe,
cool.
Tessellated into that general format and then blown up.
Another thing to consider for the game you're making is what kind of spaces are you going to be representing? Because for Tactical Breach Wizards, we did not do a hex grid because we are going to be having fights taking place in buildings, which are just going to be rectangles. They're just going to be like, most buildings in the world are just fucking rectangles. They're boring. And if you have a hex grid, now the edges of your cells don't line up to where the walls are going to be. And so that means your walls have to take up an entire cell, and that gets awkward. And also there's going to be a disparity between like how much buffer zone there is for a horizontal wall versus a vertical wall, or however you want to phrase it, north-south versus east-west. And yeah, with a square grid, obviously everything just lines up nicely, and we can have our walls happen between the cells, which gives us more interesting space for the same size of grid cell.
I think I've seen people try and work around that with like, they'll have the hexes laid out that don't quite go to the ends of the room. They'll have like, they'll be arranged around, I don't know, like treasure piles, or they'll be arranged around, detritus, so that it offers like an interesting tile set, but it also can like fit within the room. But yeah, like it's interesting to think about it in that way.
If your game takes place on basalt columns, definitely go for hex grids.
Gratifying hex chat. I love this shit. If you would like to send us some gratifying questions about shapes for a future episode of the podcast,
or just your favourite shapes.
What's your favourite shape, Pip?
I like a triangle.
Yeah.
Very sturdy triangles.
Tom?
Despite all my comments, probably a hexagon.
Yeah.
Not always the best choice for a grid, but they are very satisfying.
I think I like circles.
Oh, you would.
Classic circle liker.
Just a big old circle fan.
You're a circle jerk.
Oh. Well. I suppose if you'd like to be nice to me instead of mean, you can email us at questions@crateandcrowbar.com. You can also tweet us at Crate and Crowbar. Find us on YouTube, youtube.com/Crate and Crowbar. And thanks, as ever, to our Patreon supporters. You can find out about the podcast and the Patreon and how it supports the podcast on Patreon at patreon.com/Crate and Crowbar. Twitter is perhaps my Twitter at CThurston, CTHURSTEN.
Hashtag Kelpdesk.
Hashtag Kelpdesk. Hashtag Circle Jerk.
Oh no. I am at Philippa War, which is PHILIPPAWARR. Yes.
And I am Pentadact, PENTADACT.
Thanks. Everybody.